Welcome back. And today we're taking a look at a quick news of the day video to start things off. And according to Pierre LeBrun, the NHL Return to Play Committee, so that's the NHL and the NHLPA, have been meeting this weekend a lot. And there's traction on coming back with a 24 game setup. So we'll get into that. But that does seem like it's the most likely to happen, is a 24 team playoff. It's not perfect, but the other things I've heard, like rolling back the games so everybody's played 69, I don't like that idea at all. I don't like the idea that teams that have played games 70 and 71 and did well are going to be told, oh, yeah, you did well in those games. You did pass other teams, but still, we're going to roll it back so that other teams make the playoffs. I don't like that idea at all. The winning percentage thing, again, it assumes that that team was going to keep going on that winning percentage for the season, and it ignores that some teams weren't playing very well going into the pause. So there's no perfect way to do this, and I think that's what the NHLPA and the NHL are realizing. There isn't going to be a perfect way of doing this. So we'll see what they come up with, and I would think an announcement this week. And another thing as well that seems to be dying is the idea of having a draft in June. We're now up to May 17th, and apparently, and of course, according to Bob McKenzie, there's no real traction on the draft happening in June. The NHL can force it through. The NHL can say we're going to have the draft in June, but if less than half of the GMs and owners like that idea, then they're just ticking people off. So this again shows that the NHL, when a majority don't agree with a decision, that they don't go through with it. So as much as they'd like to have the draft earlier, it's not going to happen. I'm also going to throw in here something I mentioned in an entertainment video yesterday on the second channel, which is that your TV shows, whatever you're watching, it looks like if it's on the CW, it's not going to debut until January of 2021. So it isn't just professional sports that's being impacted and everything's getting pushed back. It's happening with television. It's obviously happening with movies as well. And I don't know where this ends because, again, it assumes things are going to be better by a certain date, and we just don't know right now. The CHL settled a class action lawsuit regarding paying players. We'll see if this changes anything going forward. Basically, it's along the lines of this, and I understand the argument has been the CHL can't afford to pay. CHL teams can't afford to pay players a minimum wage. They just can't afford to. Uh, you know, I understand that there are some teams that don't make a ton of money, but giving kids $12 an hour and figuring out how much that's going to cost them, I don't know. I mean, it's a roster of what, 20 players, 23 players. So 23, I mean, again, if we're just talking minimum wage here for these kids. It's just, I think we've started to realize, and obviously with the NCAA, it's a bigger target with that. The idea that these kids are being monetized, they are being profited off of by the CHL and by other entities as well, and there's something wrong with it, and there's something that needs to change, and I'm not sure how you change it. I'm not sure what kind of changes need to happen, but there's something that just doesn't add up here. So we'll see whether or not this lawsuit leads to greater coordination between players and owners in the CHL, which is difficult because you're talking about teenagers and you're talking about kids who are going to be in your league for 3-4 years and then they move on. This isn't like the NHL where they're going to be there 15, 20 years in some cases. So yeah, I don't know what the way forward is, but they definitely, the business model is built in a way that I'm not sure how you fix it. I don't know how they fix it, but I do think with settling a lawsuit, normally that means there's something we're settling. It means that at some point you've said, you know what, we probably screwed up here, and hopefully they change things going forward. Toronto. So if you were thinking Toronto might be a hub city, and I know it's been talked about, the mayor says kind of no. He doesn't see any sports, even without fans coming back before September at the earliest. And even then, it's up in the air about whether or not they'll be playing sports there. And it feels like people are getting louder and louder on both sides of the debate. So I'm staying out of it because at this point we've been in this for over 2 months And people are entrenched. They're entrenched in their belief, whether they think open everything or don't. That's where we're at. And I can understand both sides of the argument, and I'm just gonna step back and see what happens, because I understand certain mayors being, of the mind that things need to get better before they can think about reopening. And there are other areas where, just the financial hit people have taken has been really, really devastating. So, again, I understand. Now, the 2014 play-in, I wanted to look and see how this would work. So if you're going to have 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, and all of that, to get a playoff spot against the teams that would have buys, you have to think your top 4 teams in each conference are going to have a bye. And I wasn't worried about who the division winners were, because I don't think they're going to be worried in this situation either. So Boston, Tampa, Washington, and Philadelphia would get a bye into the playoffs with this setup. All 4 of them in the West or in the East. In the West, it would be St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Edmonton, if they go by current standings. And then the play-in would go as follows. The play-in would go as Pittsburgh versus Montreal in the East. That's 5th versus 12th. 6th versus 11th. Carolina versus Florida. Toronto versus the New York Rangers, and Columbus versus the New York Islanders. Now in the West, you'd have Dallas versus Chicago. For the record, Dallas and Chicago are 10 points apart. Pittsburgh and Montreal are 15 points apart. Winnipeg versus Arizona. Who doesn't want to see that? Calgary versus Minnesota, and Nashville versus Vancouver. So the one thing that I could see being a sticking point would be Chicago beats Dallas, which is absolutely possible. Chicago can win a 1-off or a 2 out of 3, and then Nashville knocks out Vancouver. So the idea of Chicago getting into the playoffs over Dallas and Vancouver missing because they played Nashville, it's not a perfect system. So again, we would see definitely some teams involved in this that we otherwise probably wouldn't see. Now out in this scenario, Buffalo, New Jersey, Ottawa, Detroit, Anaheim, LA, and San Jose would be the 7 teams that the NHL would not be calling upon. And keep in mind, if those 7 teams aren't playing, that's 7 teams worth of players you do not need to worry about isolating. You don't need to worry about doing the contact tracing. You don't need to worry about the testing. You don't need to worry about that. You just tell these guys, hey, self-isolate as much as possible, and we'll see what's going to happen in the fall. We'll see whether or not hockey's going to start in the fall in November, December. If we're going to start in 2021, what's going to happen? Because we really don't know. We're into complete no man's land. So while I understand the need for certainty, there isn't any. And there isn't any at any level, and I think that's part of the frustration. People just want certainty. They just want to know, okay, here's what's going to happen, and that's not there. So it is a league right now searching for the best narrative, the best way to end this season. And keep in mind, for people who say that's it, just throw the whole thing out and come back next year, this can be a trial run for next year. We don't know where we're going to be a year from now. We don't know where any of this is going to be a year from now. Yes, everything could be better in a year from now. Everything could be exactly the same a year from now. We just don't know. And again, it's that uncertainty that makes it tough for this committee to come up with a plan. And it makes it tough for leagues to come up with some sort of a plan as well. We're looking at a situation where everybody's kind of making it up as they go along. Because, as recently as early February, we didn't see this happening. We knew stuff was going on. We knew that things could get kind of ugly. We had no idea it was going to be to this extent. So, well, we'll see where things go from here, and it is highly likely we get an announcement from the NHL and the NHLPA. I'll say on Tuesday. I mean, it's a long weekend up here in Canada, so I can't see there being an announcement tomorrow. I would think there'll be an announcement probably on Tuesday. They really can't delay it much further. Remember, if they come into Canada and play games in Canada, so if they play in Calgary, well, it's not going to be Calgary, but if they play in Edmonton, they play in Vancouver, if they have it all set up like we have an arena here in Abbey, they have an arena in Langley, they have arenas all over around here they can use, and have everybody basically just at most needing a 1-hour drive on a bus from point A to point B. And there's ways to make it relatively safe. Even the Toronto mayor said they've had conversations about playing basketball And outside of the preliminary discussions, they didn't really get anywhere with it. So if you're looking for NBA games in Toronto, it's not happening either. So it's a matter of finding your locations, figuring out how you're going to make it work. Because again, for the crowd that's like, well, we'll just do it in the fall. Just worry about it in the fall. Things could be exactly the same in the fall. We could still be looking at hub cities. We could still be looking at modified schedules. We could be looking at this being the NHL's blueprint for a while going forward. So this isn't just about finishing this season. It may very well be looking at, okay, how are we going to play next season? How are we going to schedule next season if we're still in the same situation? So hopefully we get some kind of certainty. I'm hoping for that. Keep your fingers crossed. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. It means a lot. Let me know what you guys think of this format. Again, it's not perfect. It's not. The idea of Pittsburgh missing the playoffs and Florida getting in, and just the idea of these play-ins being that expansive, I could see it being 16 instead. And instead you'd have Pittsburgh versus Columbus, Carolina versus Toronto, Dallas versus Nashville, Winnipeg versus Calgary, and then Vancouver fans will lose their mind because they have the winning percentage argument as to why they were supposed to get into the playoffs. So there isn't going to be a perfect way to do this, but once they make their minds up about what they're going to do, I'll be here to report it. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you want to keep up to date on what's going on, and we'll talk to you again soon.